Hey guys, welcome back to more Entitled People stories. In this video, OP lived off-grid for years and built a homestead, but then suddenly a Karen continuously trespassed on his property and ended up pulling a gun on him. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. About 10 years ago, I decided I'd had enough of the rat race and live off-grid. The constant noise, the pollution, the feeling of being just another cog in a machine that didn't care about me, it was all just too much. So I cashed out my 401k, sold almost everything I owned and bought this little slice of heaven. It's mostly forest with a clear stream running through it and enough open land for a decent-sized vegetable garden and even a few chickens. The first couple of years were tough. I had to learn everything from scratch: how to build a sturdy cabin, how to hunt and fish, how to grow my own food. Homesteading was a dream of mine, but slowly and surely I got the hang of it. I set up solar panels for electricity, dug a well for water, and even rigged up a way to get slow but steady internet via satellite. It was not luxurious, but it was comfortable and, more importantly, it was mine. For 8 years, life was good. Sure, it got lonely sometimes, but I had my books, my guitar, and occasional trips into town for supplies and human interaction. The nearest neighbor was about 5 miles away, and we had an unspoken agreement to respect each other's privacy. Well, that all changed when the Pattersons sold their property. The new owner was a woman named Karen Anderson. Now, I try not to judge people too quickly, but Karen made it hard from day one. The first time I met her was when she came roaring up my driveway in a shiny new SUV, honking like there was no tomorrow. I stepped out onto my porch, more than a little annoyed at the intrusion, and said, "Can I help you?" Karen practically leaped out of her vehicle. She was a woman in her late 40s with perfectly bleached blonde hair and clothes that looked like they cost more than my entire homestead. "Are you the owner of this place?" she asked, her nose wrinkling as she looked around. "I am," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Name is Jack, and you are?" "Karen Anderson," she said, marching up to my porch and extending a manicured hand. I shook it briefly. "I just bought the Johnson place down the road. I wanted to introduce myself to all the neighbors." I nodded, not sure what else to say. We didn't exactly have block parties out here. Karen filled the silence, her eyes darting around my property. "So you actually live here full time, huh? How quaint. It must be like camping all year round." I could feel my hackles rising, but forced myself to stay polite. "It's a bit more permanent than camping, but yeah, this is my home." "Fascinating," Karen said in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "Well, I'm planning on making some big changes to my property, bringing it into the 21st century, you know. You should think about selling. I bet the developer would pay a pretty penny for all this land." I frowned. "I'm not interested in selling. I like it here." Karen's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly plastered it back on. "Well, think about it. Change is coming to this area whether you like it or not. Might as well get ahead of the curve, you know." With that, she turned and strutted back to her SUV, leaving me standing on my porch, a sense of unease settling in my gut. Little did I know this was just the beginning of my troubles with Karen. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing signs that someone had been on my property when I was not around. At first, it was little things like branches broken in unusual places, unfamiliar footprints in the soft earth near my garden. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was probably just wildlife. But then I started finding litter, fancy coffee cups, candy wrappers, things that definitely didn't come from me. I decided to set up a few trail cameras just to see what was going on. The footage I got made my blood boil. There was Karen, bold as brass, wandering around my property like she owned the place. She would peer in my windows, poke around my garden, and once even tried to open my shed. I was furious, but I decided to try and handle things civilly. The next time I went into town, I stopped by Karen's place. The changes she had made were something else. The old Johnson farmhouse had been completely renovated, painting a blinding white with black trim, a wrought iron gate now blocking the driveway, with an intercom system that looked out of place in our rural setting. I pressed the buzzer, and after a moment Karen's voice crackled through the speaker. "Yes, who is it?" "It's Jack, your neighbor. Can we talk?" There was a pause, and then the gate started to swing open. I drove up to the house where Karen was waiting on her porch, looking like she had stepped out of a luxury real estate magazine. "Jack," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "What a surprise. What can I do for you?" I cut straight to the chase and said, "Karen, I've got evidence of you trespassing on my property. I need you to stop." Her smile disappeared. "I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out my phone and showed her some of the photos from my trail cams. "This is you on my land without my permission multiple times." Karen's face flushed red. Well, I was just exploring the area. Surely you don't expect me to stay confined to my own property. Well, that's exactly what I expect, I said firmly. My land is private property. You're not welcome there without my invitation. She crossed her arms, her expression hardening. You cannot just hoard all that beautiful land for yourself, Jack. It's selfish. You should be sharing it with the community. I could feel my temper rising, but forced myself to stay calm. It's not hoarding, Karen. It's my home. I'm not asking you to share your house with me, am I? Well, that's different, she snapped. You're living like a caveman out there. It's not natural. I took a deep breath. Natural or not, it's my choice and my right. Stay off my property, Karen. This is your only warning. Next time I will call the sheriff. And with that I turned and walked back to my truck, ignoring Karen's spluttering protests behind me. As I drove away, I could not shake the feeling that this was far from over. I was right. Over the next few months, Karen's trespassing did not stop, it escalated. Despite my warnings, despite the no trespassing signs I put up, she kept coming onto my land, but now, instead of just wandering around, she started leaving things behind. Flyers for real estate agents specializing in untapped rural properties, brochures for planned communities, and once I even found a glossy catalog for luxury log cabins propped up against my front door. Each time I documented the trespassing and called the sheriff. Deputy Miller was sympathetic, but there wasn't much he could do besides give Karen a stern talking to. Well, she has not damaged anything, he explained apologetically. And she keeps insisting that she's just being neighborly here. Unless she threatens you or destroys property, our hands are pretty tied. I was frustrated, but I tried to take the high road. I ignored the flyers, tossed out the brochures, and went about my life. But Karen was not content to leave things at that. One day in late summer, I was out checking my solar panels when I heard the now familiar sound of Karen's SUV coming up my driveway. I sighed, steeling myself for another confrontation. Karen got out of her car and I could tell immediately that something was different. Her usual polished appearance was disheveled, her hair a mess and her clothes rumpled. Her face was red and her eyes had a wild look that set alarm bells ringing in my head. "Jack!" she yelled, storming towards me. "I've had enough of your stubbornness." I held up my hands, trying to calm her down. "Karen, you need to leave. You're trespassing again." "Trespassing?" she screeched. "This land should not even be yours. You're wasting it, living like some kind of hermit. Do you know what I could do with this property? The possibilities?" I stood my ground and said, "What could you do doesn't matter, Karen. It's my land and I'm not selling, not now, not ever. And now please leave." That's when things took a turn I never could have expected. Karen reached into her purse and pulled out a small handgun. My heart nearly stopped as she pointed it at me, her hand shaking. "You will sell to me, Jack," she said, her voice quivering. "You will sell or I will make you leave, one way or another." I raised my hand slowly, my mind racing. "Karen, think about what you're doing. This is crazy. Put the gun down and we can talk about this rationally." "Rational?" She laughed, a high, unhinged sound. "I've tried being rational. I've tried being nice, but you just won't listen." I was scared, I won't lie, but I was also angry. This woman thought she could bully me off my own land, the land I had poured 10 years of sweat and tears into. I knew I had to do something, but one wrong move could end with me getting shot. "Okay, Karen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You win. Let's go inside and we can discuss terms. Just put the gun away, please." For a moment I thought she might actually do it. Her arm lowered slightly and some of the wild light left her eyes. But then she seemed to rally, raising the gun again. "No, we will discuss it right here. I want you gone, Jack, off this property today. I'll give you a fair price, more than fair, but you have to leave. Now." I realized then that there was no reasoning with her. Karen had gone off the deep end and I needed to end this situation fast. Slowly I started to reach for my back pocket where I kept my phone and said, "All right, Karen, you've got me. Let me just get my phone so I can call my lawyer, okay?" She nodded jerkily, the gun still trained on me. I carefully pulled out my phone, making sure she could see my movements, and then, in one quick motion, I hit the emergency call button and threw the phone to the ground between us. Karen's eyes followed the phone, momentarily distracted. It was all the opening I needed. I lunged forward, grabbing her wrist and forcing the gun up towards the sky. She shrieked and tried to pull away, but years of hard physical labor had made me strong. We grappled for a few seconds before I managed to wrench the gun from her grasp. Just then, I heard sirens in the distance. My emergency call had gone through, Karen heard them too, and all the fight seemed to go out of her at once. She sagged to the ground, bursting into noisy sobs, and sometime later, my driveway was filled with sheriff vehicles. Deputy Miller was the first to reach us, his hand on his holster as he took in the scene. "Jack, you alright?" he called out. I nodded, still holding Karen's gun carefully pointed at the ground. "I'm fine, deputy, but you're gonna wanna take this lady into custody. She just tried to force me off my land at gunpoint." Karen was handcuffed and put in the back of a sheriff's car, alternating between wailing apologies and shouting that I was ruining everything. I gave my statement, handed over the gun, and showed the deputies the footage from my trail cams documenting Karen's repeated trespassing. As things were winding down, Deputy Miller pulled me aside. "Jack, I owe you an apology," he said, looking genuinely remorseful. "We should have taken your complaints more seriously. This could have ended much worse." I shrugged, the adrenaline crash leaving me feeling drained. "You did what you could with what you had. I'm just glad it's over." But it wasn't quite over, not yet. In the weeks that followed, I learned that Karen's spiral had started long before she had pulled the gun on me. Her so-called renovations had been done without proper permits, and she managed to rack up a mountain of debt in the process. The confrontation with me was apparently her last-ditch effort to acquire land she thought she could sell for a profit to cover her losses. I won't lie, a part of me felt sorry for her. But a bigger part was just relieved that she was out of my life. Karen ended up pleading guilty to attempted armed robbery and a host of other charges. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison with mandatory psychiatric treatment. As for me, well, life goes on. I'm still here on my little homestead living the life I chose, but I'd be lying if I said the experience didn't change me. I'm more cautious now, more aware of the darkness that can lurk behind a smile and a manicured facade. I've made some changes too. I've improved my security system, made friends with more of my distant neighbors, and I made sure to check in with folks in town regularly. Living off-grid does not mean that you have to cut yourself off completely after all. Sometimes when I'm sitting on my porch watching the sunset, I think about Karen. I wonder if she has found peace, if she's gotten the help she so clearly needed. And I'm grateful for my home, for my life, and for the strength I found when I needed it the most. The wilderness can be harsh, but as I learned, sometimes the real danger comes from where you least expect it. But I would not trade this life for anything. This land is my home, and come hell or high water, or gun-toting Karens, I'm here to stay. And yeah, ripe stars, if an insane Karen trespassed on your rural property, what would you have done? Would you have acted the same way as OP? Let me know in the comments. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Several years ago, I lost my leg during a rock climbing accident. I was young and silly, and I thought I was invincible like we all do when we are that age. Some of us get a rather rude reminder that we are all delicate little beings, no matter how badly you think you are immortal. The injury was not so bad as to have a massively negative effect on my life, not like some who are disabled. I can get by with a prosthetic, and if it wasn't for the awkward limp, you would not even know that I was disabled. Some days the leg can ache really badly and I have to use a wheelchair. Because of the wheelchair necessity, I owned a small van. The extra space made it easier to transport the chair when I need it and meant it was there for me should I need it when out and about. It's always with me. This story is not gonna be just about my leg though, it's the central point, but this story is about a particular Karen that is considered the monster troll of my small Polish town. This woman roams about thinking she is the queen bee, and if you cross her path, you better watch out. It's like the old Godzilla movies, you know, when Karen is near because a wave of people run before her in terror. I want to tell you guys about the time that I was a monster killer and brought down the Karenzilla. It was one of those days that my leg was not hurting, so I could move about with my prosthetic easily enough. This was several years of having to get used to it, and I was quite proud of how well I could walk now. Looking at me, you would think that I was walking with a sharp stone in my shoe. That was how my wife had described it. I was off to do the weekly shopping at Aldi. As everyone knows, when you're disabled and drive, you get given a special blue badge that allows you to park pretty much wherever you want. Double yellows, restricted access, and things like that. In particular, it's a badge that confirms you can park in disabled parking spots. There are people out there that think they can park wherever they want without a blue badge, though. They think they are the exception to the rule because they are full of self-importance. Karen is like that, and no one questions her because she is a scary beast of a woman. I don't mean that figuratively either, she is a large woman that likes to eat McDonald's for every meal. I think that she believes this awards her access to disabled spots, as there are obese people who are immobile who are genuinely disabled, but they are 10 times larger than Karen is and have genuine health problems. Karen is just lazy and wants the closest space to the shop doors possible. She is large enough to be intimidating, and that's probably why the shop manager never did anything to stop Karen from using a disabled parking spot. So well, I came in late on a Saturday and the parking area was very busy. The only space available was the one Karen considered her personal parking spot, so I parked and went to do my shopping. I came out about 45 minutes later with a full shopping trolley and I could see that there was a car directly behind my van. At first I thought it was just a person waiting for a space to become free, but then I saw Karen. I realized that she was causing a fuss and shouting at people walking by. She was mad about something I did not know at the time, but certainly found out when I got closer. She saw me, our eyes locked, and she instantly knew the van was mine. "Hey you're not disabled," she shouted at me. I've been through this several times. Like I said, I was getting pretty good at walking with a prosthetic. I tried to be as reassuring as I could and went to lift the leg of my jeans to show my prosthetic, but Karen does not care. She is not looking at my leg, she has locked eyes with me and I can see the anger in them. It was like looking at a charging shark who had not fed in weeks. She comes right up to my face, finger jabbing and everything, shouting that people like me were disgusting and inconsiderate. I should have gotten some shower gel with the amount of spit she showered me with. It didn't take long until bystanders had their phones out and were recording. This was Karen, the scourge of my town. They were not gonna get involved when she was on a rampage for fear of facing her wrath. I tried to talk to her to calm her down and show her that I was disabled, but she was having none of it. "Just look, please, I have a false leg." I kept trying to say that and get her to look down, but I think she was way too far into intimidation mode as she never took her eyes from mine. Things seemed to escalate quicker than I could react, and before I knew what was going on, she had shoved me to the ground and started to demand that I should pay for being such an inconsiderate a-hole. It was pretty clear at this point that I was in fact really disabled. I fell to the ground and my prosthetic came free and slipped out of the sleeve of my trousers. You could hear everybody gasp pretty much as one. Karen did not notice and I doubt she would have been convinced anyway. She was busy ramming my shopping into my car. This idiotic Karen was hell-bent on trying to vandalize my van because she thought that there is no way I should be parking there. "Take your shopping," she was shouting, "and get the F out of here. Don't ever let me catch you here again." Someone came to help me up at this point. That was the wrong move. She descended on the poor fool, shoved him away and snatched away his phone. That must have put strange ideas in her head because the next moment she was calling the cops on me. Maybe she thought her intimidation stretched all the way to law enforcement. While I was forced to wait for the cops to come, I tried several times to get back up and put my leg back on, but Karen would not let me so much as sit up. "You're not gonna get away from me," she declared. I was so thankful when the police finally turned up. I thought Karen might cool off a little bit, but even their presence was not enough, and in the end, Karen had to be taken away to a place she could cool off and explain to one of the cops what had happened. I spoke to the other and told him exactly what happened. Some of the witnesses stepped forward willing to help now that the authorities were here. Karen had accused me of parking illegally and then assaulting her when I was confronted. I was not worried, there were several witnesses, some of which recorded the whole ordeal, and I'm also pretty sure that Aldi had at least one CCTV camera overlooking the parking area. The next time I saw Karen, it was in court. I told the police that I wanted to press charges, and so everything went through the legal channels. I don't think that Karen was gonna be put in prison, but I wanted her to face consequences for being such a terrorist in my town. It did not even take an hour. Once the judge saw the videos on people's phones and the CCTV footage, he was outraged by Karen's behavior. He charged her with 300 hours community service and no longer allowed to be anywhere near Aldi. Now she even has to wear one of those ankle tags. I could not believe it. I feel bad for saying, but I couldn't help but smile as she left the courtroom in tears. Justice was served and the Karenzilla was defeated. The next one is titled Karen in the ER. Most of you know me, but for those that don't, here is a brief backstory. I am 33 female and I am an RN for a local clinic during the day and an ER overnight. I am married with 3 kids on with the post though. It was an ordinary day at the clinic, there was not much going on since Kevin. I was just dealing with the usual PT, patient woos, aka cough, sneezing or minor bodily injury when a young man, let's call him Todd, enters with his service dog. A beautiful border collie. Naturally the dog brings
brings out all the ladies in the office, myself included. My AA, administrative assistant nicknamed Nicole, does her regular scripted greeting towards the patient and asks the young man what brings him in. He has come in because he was not feeling very well. The AA gets him started with the paperwork while myself and the MA, medical assistant and red tech are making cooing towards this sweet fur baby. While the PT is filling out the paperwork, this small conversation took place. Me, hi sir, how are you today? What brings you in? Todd, well, you see, I have not been feeling very well lately. I'm having difficulty breathing in and out of my nose and congested in my chest. Me, I'm so sorry to hear that. Can I ask why you have a service dog? We are legally allowed to ask this question due to ADA guidelines. Todd, oh, I was born with Usher syndrome. Me, what is Usher syndrome? Todd, Usher syndrome is where over time you progressively lose your ability to see or hear. In my case, it started when I left my mom. Yeah, because of my condition, I've also developed an anxiety condition that Abby was trained to sense and cue me down. Me, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, sir. Please don't hesitate to call or ask us for help filling out any of the paperwork. Todd, oh, thank you, but that won't be necessary. I can see a little bit, but some things are just blurry. But thanks for asking. Me, oh sure sir, if you need any assistance, let us know. By the way, your dog is really sweet. What breed is she? Todd, oh, Abby? She is a 3-year-old border and she has been my best friend for years. I don't know what I could do without her. I have raised her since she was a puppy. Me, oh that's so sweet. Well, I best be getting back to work. I will be seeing you and Miss Abby, I ruffle the pup's collar, in just a minute. Let me or Nicole know if you need anything. We part ways briefly to go get the room ready for Todd and Abby. That is when we hear the door chime, indicating that another visitor has entered the facility. Per Nicole, she introduced our Karen. This woman looks like a version of Christy Alley, hands her the necessary paperwork and Karen goes to sit down only a few seats down from Todd. Todd gets up to hand Nicole the paperwork he has filled out, Abby perks up and helps Todd across the room. Karen apparently did not like this and keeps grunting and throwing nasty looks in Todd and Abby's direction. Todd and Abby take their seat and are waiting on myself and MA to bring them to the back. Karen gets up and approaches Nicole. Karen, here you go. She hands back the clipboard with the paperwork. Nicole, ma'am, I'm sorry, but I noticed you have not completed your paperwork. Is there something I could help you with? Karen, no, I don't feel comfortable in here. Nicole, I'm sorry to hear that. Can I ask how I can make you feel more welcome? Karen, why yes, you can start by removing that filthy flea bag. Nicole, ma'am, I'm sorry, but that's something I cannot do. Karen, why not? It's unsanitary to have a filthy animal in a sterile field. That dog does not belong in here. Perfect timing. Poor Abby perks her ears up as she is hearing an ambulance pass by the clinic with its horn blaring, brings to howl. Karen, oh shut up you filthy flea bag. She screeches at the dog. Shut that stupid mutt up. Todd, I'm so sorry, shushes Abby. He pulls on her leash and tries to get Abby to settle down. She does not often do this. Karen, BS, that mangy mutt probably is not a real service dog anyway. Probably just bought the vest off eBay, lying craphead. Nicole, ma'am, I'm sorry, but you cannot be approaching our other patients or the dog like this. The dog is a service dog for this patient. Please lower your voice, it may disturb the other patients in the office. Tries to redirect Karen, would you like my help filling out your paperwork so you can be seen by the provider? Karen, no. I want this dog removed and to speak to your provider. Nicole, sure ma'am. Nicole places a brief call to the back nurse station and requests that I come to the front and give a brief indication that there is an urgent matter happening out front. So I get up and go to the front where I greet and meet out Karen. Me, hi ma'am, how are you doing today? Karen, not so good honey. You see, I came in here because I'm experiencing a lady problem and this beast here keeps making inappropriate noises and stinks. I have asked your receptionist here to do her job and get that beast out of here and she refuses to kick that kid and his mutt out. This is just not okay for me. Me, oh well, I'm sorry to hear that. What noises are you hearing that you find inappropriate? Karen, it is howling, panting, and it's just so nasty and unsanitary. Me, I'm sorry ma'am, but per the ADA, we cannot discriminate against the disabled or prevent them from using a service animal. Karen, what? He is clearly abusing that animal. How can you people be so cruel and disgusting? You will burn in hell, you piece of crap. She wags her finger at Todd, and then I say, ma'am, that's enough for now. You're gonna have to calm down, or I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. There's no need for that name calling or for this issue to escalate. The dog is a service animal, and he's here to assist his owner in daily tasks. Now, if you would like to still be seen by myself or my provider, I can go ahead and take you to the back and have you wait in an exam room. Karen, really? I want to see that mutt's papers. She approaches Todd with her hand out, demanding for his registration papers. Me, ma'am, I get between her and Todd to prevent Karen from getting too close to Todd. That's not necessary. And you're not allowed to ask anyone for proof of identification or medical necessity. I think it is best you find another physician's group to take care for you, as we won't be able to help you today. Karen, how dare you? Why can't you see me? And why do I have to leave? That monster and his filthy dog should leave. She argues. I demand you kick them out now. Me, ma'am, I have asked you to stop yelling already. I'm sorry, but I will not be able to treat you today, as you are acting very inappropriate and causing a commotion here. Could you please leave? Karen, oh shut up, I can do and say whatever the hell I want to. And I will not leave until I am seen and that monster with his dog are thrown out. While my back and attention was focused on Karen, Abby had gotten up and was alerting to her owner's distress cues from Todd. All of Karen's screaming had begun to make Todd panic. That is when Todd stood up, grabbed Abby's leash and just collapsed on the floor after slightly hitting one of the other chairs in the waiting room. I quickly turned around and rushed to Todd and ordered Nicole to get the MA and other RN. Karen, oh stop faking it, you stupid idiot, scuffing and approaches Todd. She kicks his boot, trying to make him move. Nicole returns with my MA and RN while all three of us attend to Todd, and Nicole asks for Karen to step back a bit. Karen, why the hell do I have to step back? He is faking it. Get that damn dog out of here. I told you this was no place for him. Me? Shut the hell up, Karen, damn it. Not my finest hour, but I was panicked and irritated at this woman's audacity. The whole room went quiet. This would be one of the very few rare occasions that I've ever gotten this angry. I call over my shoulder for Nicole to phone for the authorities and an ambulance. I proceed to position Todd on his back with the help of the RN. I then check his airways and use my hands to feel the back of his neck and head to make sure that there is no bleeding or swelling. I also use my stethoscope to check his heart and lungs, and I then proceed to try and wake Todd up. He is not responding, and I take out my ophthalmoscope from my scrub jacket pocket and try to look into Todd's eyes. I check his pulse and ask my RN to get his blood pressure and pulse oximeter using her wrist cuff. I speak over my shoulder to my MA to start an IV line. To be honest, I don't think it was life-threatening, but I don't want to risk it with how quickly Todd went down, and besides, he did say he was having issues breathing, and I know we don't have that type of equipment within the office if he begins to code. The longest 20 minutes of my life, and an IV drip started. Todd is on the gurney bed of an ambulance and is being loaded into the back of it. I turn to the local authorities that followed the ambulance and ask them to remove Karen from the premises. Karen, but you haven't even asked about how I was doing. Me, ma'am, you would be lucky that I don't personally press charges against you for assaulting myself, my staff and that patient. You should be ashamed of yourself. Karen, oh pish posh. I did nothing wrong. You should be arrested for allowing that beast in here. Officer, enough is enough. Karen, please follow me. Karen, but... Officer then dragged her out of the office. The office did press for a trespassing ordinance against Karen and escorted her out of the building. We have not seen or heard from her since. As for Todd, and thanks to one of the daytime employees at the local ER, Todd is doing much better and needed to be observed overnight due to his head trauma and cardiac arrhythmia just for precautions. He then made a full recovery. When his relatives arrived at the hospital, the parents pressed assault charges against her Karen. I've been in communication with their attorney. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would say that was one of the craziest Karens we have ever heard of, especially considering how disrespectful she was towards the medical staff as well as the disabled person. I just cannot fathom how a person like this can live with herself knowing what she had done. Have you ever met any insane Karens like this in real life? If you have, please don't forget to share your own story if you want in the comments. Your comments are very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Entitled Neighbor Gets in Trouble Part 1. This is a long one, but I hope it is worth it. I get a frantic call from my neighbor Dean, who lives right behind me at 1:30, saying something about the city being there and needing to talk to me.
Slight backstory, his neighbor is a Karen of the worst kind. She will call the city if the grass is above half an inch above city rules, called the city on me for having chickens in my backyard. I didn't know I was not supposed to have them at the time, the neighbor city allowed it. Dean himself is an awesome guy who has known my wife since birth. He is in his 70s, a retired Navy veteran, worked on F4, became a F-14 plane captain. The sort of head guy who makes sure all maintenance is done right. I have known him for the past 15 years, a really good guy, lots of fun stories. He had received a letter from the city the previous Monday that the roof on his shed did not meet city standards and either had to replace the roof or demolish it. Last Friday I got on the Orange store site, ordered all the material for me to fix the roof. Typically, he would jump in with me and we would both handle things. He is a fit sob, but he just got diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer. He is tired all the time. Me in my 40s, no problem. Dean, I got this. I'm a capable carpenter. At 1:30, I tell my supervisor I gotta go, neighbor is having issues. I get there at 1:50 since I am close by. I get out of my truck with all the gear from the construction company I work for. The company I work for is a multi-million-dollar development company. And then Karen starts. Karen, that is him, he is the one doing the work, with an evil grin. In my city, if you replace a roof on your house over 100 square feet, you need a permit that even a homeowner can pull for a shed. However, you don't need a permit unless you're charging money or a contractor. I see a zoning guy, ZG, and 2 building inspectors, 1 senior, SI, 1 junior, JI. Senior inspector sees me. Senior inspector, do you work with Vicky? Me, yeah. Why? Senior inspector, don't worry, what's your name? Me, Mark. What makes you think that you can do roofing without a permit? I mean, with everything I see here, you're probably charging a pretty penny. Karen, he started Saturday, so he could avoid you guys and make more money. That's how these guys work. Me, I am helping Dean out. Phone rings. I have to take this, it's one of my bosses. Vicky is calling me as I called her and check on stuff, knowing full well a $1 million company would not be doing a shed roof for just some old guy. Vicky is a Virginia Tech graduate who became a supervisor right out of school. We have worked on projects 5 years ago when all she was is book smart. She is a lot younger than I am and had a rough start because she thought she needed to show dominance. She didn't, but she did have to learn real quick that paper doesn't always go as planned. Her dad is the head structural engineer that all city inspectors have to follow, and he is well liked by all inspectors. So all inspectors know her. I was with Vicky when I ordered the material on Friday. She wanted to know what was up, and in a nutshell, I told her that Karen was being a bee and causing trouble. She goes not for long, back at Junior. So what is the value of the contract? Karen, yeah, how much are you charging? Me, nothing, so I guess 0? Junior, what do you mean 0? That's all brand new material. Me, oh, material was $700, but Dean purchased it. Here's the receipt with his name on it. Karen, you cannot hide all the money you're charging. Look at all the air hoses and nail guns with big brand name saws. What's your point? Senior inspector gets a text, looks at it real quick. Mark, where do you live? Me, right there, pointing out the house behind. Senior inspector, so I will take it that you're really close to homeowner Dean since you have a gate going through it. Me, yes sir, especially since Dean got diagnosed with cancer, I've been checking on him a little bit more. Then he got the letter stating he has to fix it. I'm just trying to take off some stress off the old fart. Senior inspector, roger that. In this case, it's as if one of his children did it. Karen, what does that mean? Senior inspector, it means if Mark is not charging him, no matter what tools he owns, he doesn't need a permit. Karen, I had to pay $3,500 to get my garage done 3 months ago, and he gets off just paying $700. Senior inspector, yep. Mark, do you mind if I take a look at your work? Me, sure you can. He jumps up on the roof and calls ZG. After the virus, every inspector has been equipped with iPads so they can do virtual inspections. This iPad is also connected to all city property, as in what permits got pulled and whatnot, and he brought his with him on the roof. Senior inspector, looks pretty solid.
Me, yep, had to change plywood and replace a couple of 2x4s.
Senior Inspector, is that a pond next door?
Sure does.
Did you do a site visit for a pond, ZG?
ZG?
I sure didn't. Did you do a site visit for the roof on the garage? Sure looks like 500 square feet. Oh, that concrete back there looks pretty fresh.
Me, yep, she had it done in May, with an evil grin since I figured out the game.
Senior Inspector, let me get some pictures of all of this.
We get off the roof.
Junior, what's the penalty for altering and remodeling a roof without a permit?
$50 per 100 square feet, plus all new work must be torn down and re-inspected, sir.
Karen, is that what you found on Dean's roof? Because of the repairs he's getting all that.
Evil grin is back, looking at me.
Senior Inspector, Junior, what's the penalty for pouring concrete without checking with zoning and without a permit?
Junior Inspector, $200 per 100 square feet, sir. All has to be demo and check with watershed.
Karen, but there's no concrete here.
Senior Inspector,
Junior, what's the penalty for a pond over 1,500 gallon without checking with zoning or building permit?
Karen's face went pale, no more grin.
Junior Inspector,
huh? I don't know. Zoning guy.
I do. $75 for electrical connections without permit, plus $1,500 a day that the pond is there without permission. And since it is up against a fence, there is a 10 feet watershed water easement for water to perk there, so it's not going to happen even with a variance.
The pond, by the way, is 16 feet by 16 feet triangle shaped.
Karen, you're not supposed to look at my yard. You're here for his yard. Do you know who I am? I know Melon. He's your boss. He will fix all you.
Senior Inspector,
yeah, I know Melon too. He got fired 2 months ago for taking bribes. So we have a new boss, Karen, and she is a by the book trying to clean up Melon's mess.
Karen, leaving.
I cannot believe this crap. That's not how it's supposed to go, damn it.
I am laughing a little bit too loud. Update number 1, I am working with Vicky this morning. The call that SI did was to see if this was just side money. She confirmed that no, it was not, that I was in fact helping free of charge, and if I needed any company assistance, that I would get it. After Vicky called me, she sent a text to SI and she showed me. It read, make the BITCH pay. And really, ripe stars, I gotta say, what I still don't understand is why some people, and especially entitled neighbors, just cannot mind their own business. Why do some people always need to get involved in someone else's affairs? Either these people have too much time on their hands, or they just wish bad things on others. Next one is an update to the first story, and it is titled Entitled Neighbor Gets in Trouble Part 2 Karma Update. So I finished Dean's roof on Wednesday, my deadline was Friday. Couple of mechanical failures and rain stopped me from finishing on Tuesday. He had zoning inspection on Thursday and everything passed, so he doesn't have to demolish the shed. Zoning guy noticed that the water is no longer running in the waterfall feature in the neighbor's pond, but it is still standing, so add another $1,500 for the day. Now, today I was working doing odds and ends getting ready for the next week, and I get a phone call from the president of the company named Jack, aka Jay. Me? Hi Jack, what did I do wrong this time? Usually he calls me that I smoke too much or drink too much coffee, or that I am too hard on the subcontractor and need to back off. Jay, Mr. Mark, for once you haven't, but I've heard you have an interesting neighbor. Me, oh, you spoke to Vicky? Jay, no, not really. We had a meeting with the city about the 30-acre Centurion project and Karen was there. Here is what happened. Neighbor N decided that she would pay this new head inspector a visit on Wednesday. She didn't just nonchalantly walk in there, but she marched in with authority. Neighbor, aka N, how dare you inspector inspect my property when they are responding to a gross violation that I reported on Dean's shed? You need to remove these citations immediately. Karen, okay, hey, my name is Karen, what is your name? Neighbor, I'm Neighbor. Now, what are you going to do about these? Throwing 4 pieces of paper at Karen. Karen looks at the paperwork. Karen, let me call SI to see what this is about. Neighbor, I thought you had authority here. Melon would have cleared it already. Karen, yes, but Melon is no longer here, is he? Senior Inspector fills her in on what happened on Monday. Karen,
Yeah, looks like there's some serious fixing to do.
Neighbor, that's what I thought. Is there a stamp or are you writing an exemption? Karen,
Well, not really. See, the 10-foot egress that behind you is part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed and is in fact very bad that you put concrete there.
Neighbor, what does that mean? Karen,
I'll have to send another inspector to assess the damage you have done.
Neighbor, all this because Mark professionally did the work at my neighbor's house. Karen,
Mark happens to work for company I work for and did the roof as caretaker of Dean as stated by SI.
Neighbor stormed out. Today when I got home there was a small excavator with a demolition hammer attached to it. When my boss told me about this, I was laughing hysterically with tears coming down my face. Chesapeake Bay easements are monitored and inspected by the EPA. We know this because we had to pay quite a few fines from them. I might have more updates afterwards. And the next one is a final update on the entitled neighbor story. I spoke to Dean on Wednesday but was too busy with the week. Kinda glad I got busy since I can wrap things up with 2 conversations. Wednesday conversation, me, hey Dean, how's it going? Dean, I'm doing better than the witch next door, I tell ya. Me, what happened? Grinning ear to ear. Dean, well, a government car pulled up on Monday while they were working in her backyard. It didn't go so well. Me, let me guess, EPA? Dean, you betcha! And they stopped all the work since the escalator busted a hydraulic line. She was outside screaming at everyone she could and then some. She cussed out the inspector like he was a red-headed stepchild. He told her to shut the hell up or cops were going to be dealing with her. She personally rented an excavator from Big Green Place with a star and had her son and beer buddy doing the work on removing the concrete. So this is the update from the Dean story, but not quite till today. The entitled neighbor, EN, came over to visit me. I'm in the front yard splitting wood. Yes, winter is coming, and it is $200 a month cheaper for me to burn wood stove than gas and electric bill. Entitled neighbor,
You did this.
me, what are you talking about? EN,
I have thousands of dollars in fines now from the city because of you.
me, I'm pretty sure that's not how it goes, but if it makes you feel better, okay with me. EN,
If city wasn't enough, you all had to get the EPA into this.
me, what's your point, lady? EN shows me paperwork from EPA.
They ridiculously charged me with concrete over watershed drainage, disturbing soil in runoff with no silt fence, oil spill on soil of runoff, not having an oil spilled kit, and not having an environmental plan approved by Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I've got to pay all this because some redneck like you put the city to it.
They don't mess around with those fines, huh? Concrete over watershed drainage without approval, $175,000, 1,200 square feet were covered. Disturbing soil with no silt fence, $50,000. Oil leak from any machinery, $25,000. No spill kit, $25,000. Not having proper planning by Chesapeake Bay Foundation, $50,000. Me, I'm pretty sure you should blame whoever called the city on Dean's shed. They are the ones who blew this up. EN,
No, they didn't. If Dean would have pulled the permits like he should have done, none of this would have happened.
me, Dean did not have to pull the permits on his shed. That's a null point established by senior inspector. So what is next then? EN,
I'm going to have to sell the house to cover all the fines.
me handing back the paperwork with the evilest smile I could muster. Well, I guess I can start singing Ding Dong, the witch is gone, huh? EN,
It is not over. I will call my lawyer tomorrow.
me, go for it. Don't think that's going to work out the way you think it is. So, for the count of being a pain in the ass, she has got $325,000 worth of fines plus the city fines. Her house value is about $275,000. I'm not an attorney, but I don't think bankruptcy is going to wipe this out. If she gets an attorney, it might get cut 50% at best if she can prove she was unaware of what she was doing. As far as her suing me, there is a fat chance of that happening. I was not involved in any of it and she would have to prove payment to me to make anything stick. Update, I had to work with Vicky again today. I got her up to speed with what was happening with the neighbor. She laughed to the point that she almost peed herself a little. Apparently, Head Inspector Karen's husband works for the EPA, in charge of erosion control is what she told me. Best hour of work to start the day laughing with the other guys. And ripe stars, I would say the moral of the story is that it can be much cheaper for you if you keep your nose out of other people's business. Otherwise, you might end up needing to sell your house to cover huge fines. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.